By now, you have probably heard about the 4.5-hour town hall that Vladimir Putin conducted at the end of December. It seemed to be all over the media ecosphere, and yet I have kept relatively quiet about it. Of course, there is a reason for that. And it is the old adage, don't listen to what leaders say, watch what they do. But there was one subject of conversation that I think is worth talking about. To put that in context, the reason that we should mostly ignore a country's comments about its own strength and resolve is that settlements get negotiated around the expected outcome of a war. Given that, Russia is better off if everyone thinks that it is stronger than it really is. In turn, no matter Russia's true strength, you end up hearing the same sort of messaging about how everything is rock solid. And there sure was a lot of that during what is officially called the Results of the Year 2024 television special, both in regard to the strength of the Russian economy and the military situation in Ukraine. Allow me to read a bit of that type of messaging for you. The economic situation in Russia is generally positive and stable. We are growing in spite of everything, in spite of any external threats or attempts outside influence. As you know, last year Russia increased its GDP by 3.6%, and this year the economy is expected to grow by 3.9%, or possibly even 4%. What this means is that our country will have grown by 8% over the past 2 years, compared to a growth rate between 5 and 6% for the United States, 1% for the Eurozone, and 0% for Germany, the EU's economy. It seems that next year that country will also have zero growth. I believe that Russia has become significantly stronger in the past 2 or 3 years. Why? Because we are becoming a truly solid country, and we barely depend on anybody. We are capable of firmly standing on our feet when it comes to the economy. I have already talked about economic growth rates. We are strengthening our defense capacity. The combat readiness of the Russian armed forces is the highest in the world today. I assure you, it is the highest. The same is true of our defense industry. We are increasing production of everything our army and navy need now, and will be in the future. We are doing so confidently and quickly, unlike our opponents. Whew. I need a breather. That was just under 90 seconds in real time, and I was only reading small excerpts from 2 sections of it. So let's save everyone some headaches and get to the important declarations. Rather, the actual important news came during a bit about reconstruction plans for what Russia describes as its historical territories. To narrow things down even further, let's focus on Mariupol, a city along the coast of the Sea of Azov. If that sounds familiar, you might remember the name from the beginning of the war. It was the final Ukrainian citadel along the Crimean land bridge. Elements of the Azov regiment bunkered there inside of an old steel plant all the way until May 20th, 2022. This is what Putin said about it at the end of the year roundtable. We are paying a lot of attention to Mariupol. What is the situation there? Residential buildings are being repaired or rebuilt. We are also working to improve local roads, schools, social and cultural facilities, and healthcare. A large medical center has recently reopened there, and educational institutions. As for housing, again, many projects have been allocated to commercial developers. Now, I know this should also bring back the do not listen to what leaders say, watch what they do mantra. But as far as anyone can tell, Russia is indeed reinvesting heavily into Mariupol. In other words, the doing is matching the saying. Here you are watching a video from Putin's March 19, 2023 trip to the city, which served as an overview of how Russia planned to reconstruct it. What makes this different from the cheap talk that dominated most of the roundtable is that Russia is actually spending money here. It is a cost that comes out of the Ministry of Finance, regardless of what happens over the long run of the war. In contrast, if you just say that things are going great during a television special, then there is no real cost to you if you were truly lying, and it will not make the outcome of the war noticeably worse if you lose later. Oh, and because I ended up watching way too many videos of Putin driving as I was producing this video, blinkers and public declarations of strength are both free, yes, but they differ on a critical dimension. When I am turning left, I want you to know that I am turning left, and you want to know that I am turning left. When I am not turning, I want you to know that I am not turning, and you want to know that I am not turning. Our incentives are aligned, and so communication works well. By comparison, Russia's incentives are not aligned with Ukraine or the West, and hence the situation encourages false messaging. Here you need costly signals, like investment in Mariupol, to bring credibility. Now, some of the purpose of doing so is to co-opt people in the annexed regions who are indifferent between Ukrainian and Russian rule. Obviously, the Kremlin wants them to be okay with following Moscow's lead. And, obviously again, that is a lot easier when there are economic opportunities available in their home cities. In other words, investment in Mariupol makes Mariupol more likely to stay within Russia's domain. But it seems that Moscow is going above and beyond that minimal effort. Indeed, those costs for reconstruction are higher right now than they seemingly should be. Interest rates in Russia stand at 21%. Normal investments are basically impossible to make at this point, unless they generate an absurd return. Moreover, construction itself is expensive, with Ministry of Defense contracts competing with regular labor, which has resulted in a spike in employees' wages. In sum, the investment in Mariupol and elsewhere is consistent with a genuine belief inside of Russia that Russia will be holding onto the territory for the long haul. Of course, all of the investment could still be misleading, but it would be a pretty convoluted bluff. To be clear, there remains hope in the West that Ukraine will somehow bounce back and at least reimpose the January 2022 line of control. Yes, 2024 was a bad year for Kyiv in terms of lost Ukrainian territory, but the expectation heading into the year was that Kyiv was going to have to spend time reconstituting its forces, so what happened is consistent with expectations. And there are plausible narratives that could get Ukraine there, whether from a massive influx of military aid from the Trump administration, or a complete breakdown in Russia's economy. Okay, it is going to require a whole bunch of aid, commensurate with a massive reinvestment in the US arms industry. But that is something that the United States has within its power. And Russia's economy does look fragile. Fragile economies can trudge along for a while, of course, but if the dam bursts, it would have massive consequences for Russia's own ability to supply the war, never mind maintain the political will to continue it. Anyway, the point here is that if the West believes that the Russian outward projection of confidence is pure bluster, where the rubles are going indicates otherwise. Perhaps as a useful comparison, though not nearly at the same scale, it might help to think about the construction of the Kerch Bridge. It was an incredibly expensive undertaking, and something that Moscow was only willing to do because it did not believe that Crimea was heading back to Ukraine anytime soon. It also doubled as a signal to any uncertain outside observer about what the Kremlin thought about the situation. That does not mean that Russia's assessment is correct, obviously. We only need to go back to the start of the war to see an example of misplaced optimism from the Kremlin, leading to very bad problems for the Kremlin later. And the upshot there for the West is that when Russia gets things wrong, it historically has a hard time making the necessary course corrections. That miscalculation at the beginning of the war, for example, led to a month of failures as the Russian armed forces tried to surround Kyiv. It then delayed the Kremlin mobilizing a large enough force to hold territory in the east of Ukraine, which allowed Kyiv to go on 2 major offensives in September and November 2022. Only after the retreat from Kherson did Russia begin to right the ship, setting us up where we are today. However, it does mean that the West and Ukraine will have to convince Russia the hard way, and that dreams of coercing the Kremlin at the bargaining table are increasingly unlikely. Meanwhile, I will convince you the hard way that my books on the war are awesome. This is probably the 100th time you have heard that. I guess it is what it is. Check the video description for more information on them. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Oh, and did you see my end of the year Q&A on my alternate channel? Check that out too.